He may even identify himself with it and believe that he is what he appears to be.
Welcome to the NCE Study Guide. I created this study guide using ChatGPT and Notebook LM. So think of these modules as AI-powered audio flashcards. Each one of these 20 modules contains 10 mock questions, representing the kind of questions that you might encounter on the National Counseling exam. I created this primarily for myself, and I decided to make these available to anyone else who might benefit from this kind of study aid. But please note, while I have done my best to ensure that these modules align with NCE content, I encourage you to cross-reference them with trusted study guides and resources for the most accurate preparation. These modules are not affiliated with or endorsed by the NBCC or any official licensing board. So, with no further ado, here are your AI study buddies from Notebook LM. Enjoy!
Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive to help you prep for the NCE?
Absolutely. Module 13 is jam-packed with important theories and therapy approaches.
It can feel a little overwhelming.
Totally, but we're going to make it manageable, I promise. Think of it like we used AI and Notebook LM to make these audio flashcards.
Exactly, but way more fun than just flipping through cards.
So let's break down each question.
Explore those tricky multiple choice options.
And make sure you not only know the right answer, but you actually understand the concept behind it.
So you can apply it on the exam and beyond, right?
Precisely.
I've got some surprising examples to help you remember these.
Oh, I love those. You always come up with the best ones.
All right, let's jump right into our first question. Question 121. Which type of therapy focuses on increasing clients' awareness of the connections between their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors?
Okay, here are your options. A, Gestalt therapy.
B, cognitive behavioral therapy.
C, psychoanalytic therapy.
And D, solution-focused brief therapy.
So lots to unpack here.
Each of these has a unique perspective. Where should we start?
Let's begin with Gestalt therapy.
Okay, so Gestalt therapy, that's all about being present in the here and now, right?
Exactly. It's less about digging into the past or planning for the future.
More about helping clients really tune into their immediate experience.
Their thoughts, feelings, and physical sensations, all of it.
So, like if you're feeling anxious, a Gestalt therapist might guide you to notice the tightness in your chest.
The racing of your heart, the shallowness of your breath, yeah.
Bringing that awareness to those physical sensations.
Rather than getting swept away by the worries themselves, exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. What about option B, cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT?
Oh, CBT. It's become really popular over the years.
And for good reason. It's so practical.
It focuses on how our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors all influence each other. Like a triangle, right?
That's a great way to think about it. Our thoughts impact our feelings.
Feelings influence our behaviors.
And our behaviors can reinforce our thoughts, yeah.
Creating these cycles, sometimes they're negative cycles, unfortunately.
And CBT gives us the tools to break out of those. Right?
Absolutely. Now, how about C, psychoanalytic therapy? This one goes deep, really deep.
We're talking about delving into the unconscious mind.
Exactly. Exploring those past experiences.
Understanding how they shape our present.
It's almost like an archaeological dig into our psyche.
I like that analogy. So, like, if you have a recurring dream about being chased,
a psychoanalytic therapist might help you explore what that dream symbolizes.
See if it connects to unresolved fears or conflicts from your past. Fascinating.
And then there's D, solution-focused brief therapy.
This one's all about finding solutions and making changes quickly, as the name implies.
Absolutely. It lives up to its name. Solution-focused therapists really believe that clients have the resources and strengths within themselves
to overcome their challenges, yeah.
So instead of dwelling on the problems, they help clients envision what they want their future to look like.
And then take those concrete steps to make it a reality.
Think of it like a treasure hunt for solutions. I like that.
So to quickly recap our question, which type of therapy focuses on increasing clients' awareness of the connections between their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors?
The correct answer is B, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Why is that?
Because CBT really zeroes in on how those three things, thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, are all intertwined, and how changing one can have a ripple effect on the others. Remember that triangle we talked about?
That's CBT in a nutshell.
Exactly. All right, let's move on to question 122.
Okay, question 122. In Piaget's theory of cognitive development, which stage is marked by the ability to think logically about abstract ideas?
Okay, let's hear those options. A, preoperational stage.
B, sensoromotor stage.
C, formal operational stage.
And D, concrete operational stage.
Piaget, I mean, his stages of development are essential, right?
Absolutely. Understanding how children's thinking evolves is so foundational to our work.
So where should we begin?
Let's start with option A, the pre-operational stage.
Okay, so the pre-operational stage, that's typically between the ages of 2 and 7.
During this stage, kids are developing language skills, right?
Yes, they're also engaging in pretend play.
Starting to grasp the idea of symbols,
But their thinking is still pretty egocentric.
meaning they mainly see the world from their own perspective
Like when a kid covers their eyes and thinks they're invisible.
because they can't see you. A classic example of pre-operational thinking.
And that thinking isn't quite logical yet, which is totally normal for that age.
Right, it's all part of the process.
Yeah.
What about the sensory motor stage, option B?
Yeah, the sensory motor stage. That's in from birth to around age 2.
It's all about exploring the world through those senses. Right.
Exactly, and those motor skills.
The babies are learning about object permanence.
That's the idea that things still exist even when you can't see them.
Peekaboo is a perfect example of that. Not just a fun game,
It's actually helping those little brains develop.
but it's so cute to watch.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to option C, the formal operational stage.
Now, this is where things get interesting. Formal operational stage begins around age 12 and continues into adulthood.
And this is when abstract thinking really takes center stage.
Teenagers and adults at this stage can think about hypothetical situations
Consider all sorts of possibilities.
and engage in some really complex problem solving.
You can understand those big concepts like justice and fairness,
Morality, too. They can start to see that bigger picture, you know.
the world beyond their own immediate experiences. That's huge.
Okay, and finally, there is D, concrete operational stage.
So this is kind of a bridge between pre-operational and formal operational. Right?
Exactly, usually between the ages of 7 and 11.
During this stage, kids are becoming much more logical in their thinking.
You start to understand conservation,
That the amount of something stays the same even if you change its shape.
like pouring water into different glasses, right?
Exactly. And they can classify and organize information more systematically.
They're really building those logical thinking skills.
Okay, so to recap our question, in PA's theory of cognitive development, which stage is marked by the ability to think logically about abstract ideas?
The correct answer is C, formal operational stage.
It makes sense, right? That's when those abstract thinking abilities really take off.
All right, ready for the next one?
Bring it on. Question 123. What is the primary goal of motivational interviewing?
And your options are A, exploring unconscious motivations.
B, enhancing client motivation to change.
C, challenging irrational beliefs.
And D, resolving family conflict.
Motivational interviewing, MI, it's a super powerful approach.
Especially when you're working with clients who are, maybe ambivalent or resistant to change.
Oh, absolutely. Let's start with option A, exploring unconscious motivations.
That sounds more like a psychoanalytic approach, right?
Yeah, going deep into those psychological issues. But MI, it's more focused on the client's conscious awareness.
And their own desire for change, their own inner drive.
Exactly. It's about empowering them to make choices that align with their values and goals.
Not about uncovering those hidden conflicts or anything like that.
Okay, what about B, enhancing client motivation to change?
That seems to be the very essence of motivational interviewing.
It really is. It's about helping those clients explore their ambivalence, that push and pull.
Between wanting to change, but maybe being a bit hesitant.
And then tipping those scales towards positive action.
It's like being a gentle guide, right?
Exactly, like a dance partner, not dragging them along.
Okay, moving on to C. Challenging irrational beliefs.
Now that sounds a lot more like a cognitive approach to me.
Yeah, like REBT or CBT.
And while MI might touch upon beliefs that are hindering change, it doesn't directly confront those beliefs.
It's more about guiding the client to see them, to become aware of them.
To consider different perspectives.
And then D, resolving family conflict.
Important in family therapy, for sure.
But not the core focus of MI.
Right. Motivational interviewing, you can use it in so many different settings.
And it always comes back to that individual's motivation to change no matter what the context.
So to recap, what is the primary goal of motivational interviewing?
The answer is B, enhancing client motivation to change. It's about helping clients tap into their own internal resources.
Exactly. Helping them move towards that future they envision for themselves.
All right, let's dive into question 124. What term describes the concept that symptoms of a mental health condition can serve a purpose or function in a family system?
Okay, your choices are A, enmeshment,
B, triangulation,
C, functional symptom.
and D, homeostasis.
Family systems therapy. The family as a dynamic system.
Kind of like a mobile, right? If you move one piece, the whole thing shifts.
I love that analogy. And sometimes, those seemingly negative behaviors, they actually serve a purpose in maintaining that balance.
It's a little counterintuitive, but it makes sense when you think about it.
So option A, enmeshment. What do you think?
Enmeshment. That's about families where the boundaries are really blurred, right?
Yes. Individuals are just way too involved in each other's lives.
It can be hard for people to develop that sense of autonomy in those families.
Like a tangled ball of yarn, it's hard to tell where one person ends and the other begins.
That's a great way to put it. Okay, what about option B, triangulation?
Triangulation. This is so common when there's tension between two people and a third person gets pulled in.
Often to kind of try to alleviate the tension.
Or avoid that direct confrontation, right?
Like a couple who's always arguing and redirects their anger towards their child.
The child becomes the scapegoat, unfortunately.
Okay, option C, functional symptom.
Functional symptom. This is when someone's symptoms, even though they're distressing,
They actually serve a purpose in maintaining the family system's balance.
even though the symptom is causing pain for the individual, it's inadvertently holding the family system together.
Keeping it in that familiar but often dysfunctional pattern.
Exactly. And then there's D, homeostasis,
Homeostasis, that's about the tendency of systems
including family.
to strive for equilibrium, right?
That stability, even if it isn't healthy for everyone involved.
Like a thermostat, trying to keep things at a certain temperature.
Even if some people in the room are too hot or too cold.
So to recap our question, what term describes the concept that symptoms of a mental health condition can serve a purpose or function in a family system?
The answer is C, functional symptom. It really highlights how someone's symptoms, even if they cause them distress.
Can be inadvertently maintaining that family system's equilibrium.
Okay, on to question 125.
Question 125. In Carl Jung's theory, what does the shadow represent?
Okay, here are your choices. A, the conscious mind.
B, the aspect of the self that seeks self-actualization.
C, the unconscious aspects of the self that are repressed or denied.
And D, the part of the psyche focused on social conformity.
Jungian psychology, it's fascinating, but can be a bit complex.
It really delves into those complexities of the human psyche.
Let's see if we can shed some light on those options, shall we?
Absolutely. So, option A, the conscious mind.
The conscious mind, that's those thoughts and feelings we're directly aware of in the present moment.
Right. It's our everyday awareness. Those thoughts and feelings we readily identify with.
Just the tip of the iceberg, so to speak.
Okay, what about option B? The aspect of the self that seeks self-actualization.
Self-actualization, that's that innate drive to fulfill our potential, become the best version of ourselves.
It's a beautiful thing, really, that yearning for a meaningful life.
Exactly, like our inner compass guiding us towards growth and wholeness.
Okay, let's consider option C. The unconscious aspects of the self that are repressed or denied.
Now we're getting closer to the heart of Jung's shadow.
It's about those parts of ourselves that we consider unacceptable, the ones we push away.
Those dark or hidden aspects we try to hide from ourselves and others.
It's like the basement of our personality, all the stuff we don't want to face.
Our fears, anger, those selfish impulses.
We try to keep it locked away, but it often seeps out.
Exactly. It shows up in our behaviors and relationships, even if we don't want it to.
And finally, option D. The part of the psyche focused on social conformity.
This is more about the persona, that mask we wear.
To fit in with societal expectations.
Trying to present that perfect image to the world.
So the question was, in Carl Jung's theory, what does the shadow represent?
The answer is C. The unconscious aspects of the self that are repressed or denied.
It's so important to acknowledge those hidden parts, even the uncomfortable ones.
Absolutely. It's part of becoming a whole person, integrating those shadow aspects.
Okay, on to question 126.
Question 126. Which therapeutic approach includes the technique of empty chair to address unfinished business?
All right, the empty chair. Love this one. Here are your options. A, Gestalt therapy.
B, psychoanalytic therapy.
C, person-centered therapy.
And D, cognitive therapy.
Okay, so which one of these resonates with that empty chair?
Well, Gestalt therapy is all about present moment awareness, right?
And bringing that unfinished emotional business to the surface.
That empty chair technique fits right in. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. It's such a powerful way for clients to work through those unresolved emotions or conflicts.
They're engaging in a dialogue with an imagined person.
Or even part of themselves. They could be talking to a deceased loved one,
An absent parent.
their own inner critic. It's amazing what comes up.
It really allows them to express all those bottled up feelings.
Gain those new insights, find closure.
What about psychoanalytic therapy? Do you think it would use the empty chair?
I'm not so sure. While psychoanalytic therapy does delve into the unconscious,
It doesn't typically use the empty chair.
it's more about free association and dream analysis, using words to understand those hidden depths.
Okay, makes sense. What about person-centered therapy?
Person-centered therapy, it's all about creating that safe space.
Empathy, that unconditional positive regard.
The client's own innate capacity for growth. Less about techniques and more about creating that holding environment.
Exactly, being a compassionate witness.
And then cognitive therapy, what do you think?
Cognitive therapy focuses on identifying and changing those negative thought patterns, right?
While cognitive techniques are very effective, they don't usually involve the empty chair.
All right, so to recap, which therapeutic approach includes the technique of empty chair to address unfinished business?
The answer is A, Gestalt therapy. It's a signature technique in that approach.
Allowing for that powerful experiential way to process emotions.
Okay, on to question 127.
Question 127. Which of the following is an example of a variable interval reinforcement schedule?
And here are your choices. A, checking email at unpredictable times.
B, a worker paid for every 10 items produced.
C, a slot machine in a casino.
D, a weekly allowance given every Saturday.
Reinforcement schedules, those can be a little tricky.
But they're so important for understanding how consequences shape behavior. So let's break them down.
Sounds good to me. Let's start with option A, checking email at unpredictable times.
Checking email. Do you ever find yourself constantly refreshing that inbox?
Oh, all the time. Hoping for that new email, that notification.
Even though most of it is probably junk, right?
Probably, but there's always that chance it'll be something exciting.
And that little dopamine rush when you see a new message.
It keeps you coming back for more.
And that's the variable interval schedule at play, isn't it?
Yeah, the reinforcement, that feeling of excitement.
It comes at unpredictable times.
Okay, I get it. What about B? A worker paid for every 10 items produced.
That's a fixed ratio schedule.
Meaning the reinforcement comes after a set number of responses, the paycheck in this case.
Right, so it's consistent and predictable. You do the work, you get the reward.
Okay, on to C. A slot machine in a casino.
Think about that anticipation.
The thrill of pulling the lever.
Never knowing when that next win will come.
That's variable ratio, right?
Right.
You might win after 5 spins, or it could take 50.
Exactly. That unpredictability keeps you hooked.
And then there's D. A weekly allowance given every Saturday.
That's our fixed interval schedule. The reinforcement comes at a predictable time every Saturday.
So, to recap, which of the following is an example of a variable interval reinforcement schedule?
The correct answer is A, checking email at unpredictable times.
That reward of a new email, it comes at those varying times.
That's a classic example of a variable interval schedule.
Okay, on to question 128.
Question 128. What is the purpose of the exception question in solution-focused brief therapy?
Here are your options. A, to identify times when the client's problem was absent or less severe.
B, to challenge the client's distorted thinking patterns.
C, to explore the root causes of the client's issues.
D, to measure the severity of the client's symptoms.
So solution-focused therapy, it's all about finding those moments when things are going well.
Even if they're just tiny moments.
Exactly. Highlighting the exceptions to the problem.
What do you think about option A? To identify times when the client's problem was absent or less severe.
That sounds like the heart of the exception question.
It really does, doesn't it?
Helping clients remember those times, even if they were brief,
It taps into their resilience.
shows them they already have some of the tools they need.
What about option B? To challenge the client's distorted thinking patterns.
That sounds more like CBT.
Right, more of a cognitive approach.
And solution-focused therapy, it's less about what's wrong and more about what's working.
Emphasizing those exceptions.
And C, to explore the root causes of the client's issues.
Now, that might be relevant in other therapies, for sure.
But solution-focused therapy is more future-oriented,
It's about solutions for the present and future.
looking forward, not backward.
And D, to measure the severity of the client's symptoms.
Well, measuring symptoms is important for sure, to track progress.
But that's not what the exception question is about.
It's about finding those glimmers of hope, those times when the problem wasn't front and center.
So, to restate our question, what is the purpose of the exception question in solution-focused brief therapy?
The answer is A, To identify times when the client's problem was absent or less severe.
It's a beautiful way to help clients recognize their own ability to cope and overcome challenges.
Yeah. Let's tackle question 129. What is systematic desensitization?
Okay, your options are A, gradually exposing a client to feared stimuli while teaching relaxation techniques.
B, using cognitive restructuring to address distorted beliefs.
C, creating an imagined safe space to reduce anxiety.
And D, rehearsing adaptive behaviors in real-life situations.
Systematic desensitization, it's a classic technique.
Especially for treating phobias and anxiety, right?
Absolutely, it's all about slowly building up that tolerance.
Creating new associations.
So, option A, gradually exposing a client to feared stimuli while teaching relaxation techniques. What do you think?
That's systematic desensitization in a nutshell.
It is, isn't it?
You wouldn't just throw someone with a fear of spiders into a room full of spiders.
No, definitely not.
It's about taking small, gradual steps
Pairing those steps with relaxation techniques.
so they can manage the anxiety along the way.
What about option B, using cognitive restructuring to address distorted beliefs?
That sounds more like a cognitive approach, right?
Yes, like CBT.
While cognitive techniques can be helpful for phobias, they're not the main mechanism of systematic desensitization.
Right, cognitive restructuring might focus on challenging that thought like, all spiders are dangerous.
Whereas systematic desensitization, it's about changing the emotional and behavioral reactions.
What about C, creating an imagined safe space to reduce anxiety?
That sounds more like a visualization or guided imagery technique to me.
It can be helpful for relaxation, for sure.
But it's not the core principle of systematic desensitization.
Right. Systematic desensitization is about confronting the fear, not escaping from it.
Doing it in a controlled and gradual way.
And then D, rehearsing adaptive behaviors in real-life situations.
That sounds like behavioral rehearsal, or maybe role-playing,
Which can be helpful.
but not the core principle of systematic desensitization.
So to summarize, our question was, which of the following describes systematic desensitization?
The answer is A, gradually exposing a client to feared stimuli while teaching relaxation techniques.
It's a tried and true technique for helping people overcome those really debilitating fears and phobias.
Okay, we've made it to our last question for this part of the deep dive, question 130. In Erik Erikson's psychosocial theory, what is the primary challenge of late adulthood?
All right, here are your options. A, generativity versus stagnation.
B, integrity versus despair.
C, intimacy versus isolation.
And D, autonomy versus shame.
Erikson's stages, they provide such a wonderful framework.
For understanding those key challenges we face throughout life.
From infancy to old age, it's all there.
So where should we begin?
How about option A, generativity versus stagnation?
Okay, generativity versus stagnation, that's the central challenge of middle adulthood, right?
Exactly. It's about finding meaning and purpose through work, family, contributing to the world.
Leaving a legacy, making a difference.
Now, option B, integrity versus despair, that comes in late adulthood.
When individuals are reflecting on their lives,
They might experience satisfaction, fulfillment,
or regret maybe those missed opportunities,
It's about coming to terms with the life they've lived
the choices they've made.
and hopefully finding peace.
What about C, intimacy versus isolation?
That's more of the psychosocial task of young adulthood.
Yeah, forging those meaningful connections, love, friendship, belonging.
That yearning for closeness.
And then there's D, autonomy versus shame.
Autonomy versus shame, that's early childhood.
Developing independence, asserting our will, learning to do things for ourselves.
Those first steps towards separateness.
They're terrible twos.
So to recap, in Erik Erikson's psychosocial theory, what is the primary challenge of late adulthood?
The answer is B, integrity versus despair. That deep reflection, that self-evaluation.
It can be such a profound time of life. Okay, phew, we covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into Module 13.
From Gestalt therapy to Erikson stages, it's been a whirlwind.
But you've done a great job. These concepts are essential for the NCE.
Well, listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Module 13.
Keep studying, and we'll see you on the next one.
Bye for now.
1, 2, 3.
Nice to be in orbit.